Okay, we'll move to a discussion on the Center Area Transportation Authority, or CATA, services in Ferguson Township. We'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will actually go ahead and yield the floor to the CATA Executive Director Interim, Mr. David Rishold.
Good evening, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you tonight. I don't think I've ever had a warm-up before from a public hearing, so hopefully no action is required for this, so we can go forward. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of the changes that we've just made with our services and a little bit about what's coming or what we're working on into the future. Please, you can go ahead. Just as an overall kind of financial picture of where CATA is at the moment, our budget for this past year was just under $26 million, and probably is difficult to see from where you're sitting, but to break that down, about 15 million, or about 62% of our budget is state and federal subsidies that we receive. We also receive, in yellow there, the other revenues, which is essentially advertising and other things that we're able to generate from our buses. We also get contract revenues. This is a combination of contracts we have with apartment complexes for passes, where we add extra service for those passengers, and also with Penn State University, which is our biggest contractor. As you probably know, we operate the loops and the link routes on campus under contract to Penn State. We also get almost $2 million from fare box revenue, fares paid by passengers. I'll skip over the red for a second, and then we get 774,000 from you folks, not all from you, but from the 5 municipalities that are members of CATA as local match, and that enables us to get all the money in the blue. Sadly, we do have a deficit. This has really been a result of services that have declined since COVID. We're still more than 1 million rides a year under pre-COVID levels. We were 2 million, so we've cut that gap a little bit, but we're still trying to climb back up from there. And next slide, please. That really leads me to what I wanted to talk about mostly today, which is some adjustments we've made to our service. To give you some background, since COVID, not only was our ridership down, but we lost quite a few drivers. And we have not been able to replace those drivers. We've been consistently down from 12 to 15% with our driving force. And we've tried many creative recruiting efforts, and we simply haven't been able to get over that hurdle. So we took a good look at service because we'd really reached a point where we were using a lot of non-operation staff to drive routes, even in some cases dispatchers and mechanics who had CDLs and were trained to be able to drive a route. And this is something that simply was not sustainable for CATA. And we looked at our services because some of the ridership is down, and we tried to determine, are there some ways that we can surgically adjust our services, look at some areas where the ridership has dropped off, and we can provide some alternatives in those areas to save some of the driver hours necessary to operate our service, so that we can be sure that we can reliably operate the service that we do have on the schedules. So, yeah, that's all right. So what we did is we took a look at our ridership, and we were able to look at ridership by stops and see where people are getting on, where they're getting off the buses. And we came up with a package of adjustments that would save 388 driver hours, yet would only impact 140 passengers who were using our service system-wide. And for those 140 passengers, the change that they would experience is, rather than being able to get on a fixed route that went by their house, they would access CATA through our GO microtransit service. So no one was going to be left without service. It's just a small number of people would have to use GO to access the system. Our preference was to not have to make any of these changes, but we really had no choice. We implemented this new service last Monday, and in general, the implementation has gone incredibly smoothly. One of the slight complications is that in December, we implemented a new software system for our CATA Go service. If you're not familiar with a CATA Go, it's kind of an Uber-like service where you have a handheld app or you can call a reservation number, you request a ride, and a vehicle will come and pick you up, and often you'll get to share that ride with somebody else. The app that we were using didn't guarantee your pickup time. You couldn't lock that in. It also couldn't lock in a delivery time. And one of our goals going forward is to try to synchronize these services as much as possible so that if you're living in an area served by CATA Go and you want to connect to the fixed route, the software will actually help you make that connection. Our previous software did not have that function. This software has that capability, but we're still working on implementing it. When we put this new service in place, one of the things we were concerned about is an area that we have shifted from fixed route service to CATA Go service is kind of the Cato Park area out here. We have a very small number of people who come out here, but we knew we had some people who did commute to and from here. So our fixed route service now ends at Butt Street, and last week we stationed a CATA Go vehicle at that area just in case passengers weren't aware of the change, to be sure nobody was stranded. And we actually did pick up 4 or 5 people every day who were making that connection coming out here to work. The feedback we got from those passengers is that they liked the service, they were happy with it. So it's a work in progress. Next slide. So some specific ridership updates for Ferguson Township. For CATA Ride, and CATA Ride is our paratransit service. This is a service for folks who have disabilities and senior citizens. We have 71 registered patrons who use the service in Ferguson Township. 7 of them use it because of disability-related issues under the ADA. 64 of them use it as lottery funded, so they're seniors. And we did 3,500 trips last year. 41% were medical related, and the rest were employment, shopping, education, and other purposes. Next slide, please. Our CATA Go service, one of the changes that we made in August is we used to have 2 CATA Go regions out here that were not connected. We connected everything together, so we now call it the Center West region. It's the blue area in the map. You can see, here's a list of the places. I'm not going to read them. But you can travel both within this service and you can connect to the fixed route system at several points within here, and ridership in this area has been growing throughout the year. Next slide. So an overview again of our CATA Go service. The fare for CATA Go is the same as for fixed route. It's $220 per ride. It runs 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday in this area. A new thing about the application that we're using, the handheld application, as I said, is you can either book for a pickup time or you can book for desired delivery time. We're still working out some kinks for the software, but it is working on the whole much better than the old software that we've turned off. The idea of this service is to optimize shared rides. It's a somewhat expensive service for us to operate, and the more people we can take at one time with a vehicle, the more cost effective the service is. It makes a great deal of sense in areas with lower density where we're unlikely to ever get a full bus. So as we kind of get out of the core of the region, we want to be sure that passengers have access to public transit service. This is a far more cost-effective way of doing it in terms of cost efficiency than continuing to run buses there where nobody's riding on. A few other things we've done to help people make this adjustment or to use these services. We actually produced a video, a how-to video, that's just gone live on our website last week that goes through the process of how to book a ride, how to use the service, and we've already gotten some good feedback about that. And of course, all of our CATA Go vehicles, or the CATA Go service in a whole, is fully accessible and ADA compliant, and we have bike racks in all the vehicles as well. This is just kind of a plug for our new app, easy to download, available on the App Store and on the Google Play Store and through our websites. I want to give you also an update on some conversations we're having with our contracted municipalities. So to give you a quick overview of the difference, the 5 member municipalities that CATA is legally created to serve are the Borough of State College and the township surrounding the center region. In order for us to provide service in any other area, we have to have a contract with the municipality of that area, and that contract has to specify what the services they want us to provide, and they also have to assure us that the service will be financially self-sustaining. And currently, we provide service in 3 municipalities that are beyond the center region: Spring Township, Benner Township, and the Borough of Bellefonte. So the cost apportionment, you can see the difference here on the on your left side is the cost apportionment for the center region. Because we operate a number of different services here that create some subsidies, we're able to apply some of those subsidy, or I wouldn't call them profits, but additional revenues to offset some of the costs. That's not available to municipalities that are contracting with us for service. So in that case, any services provided to a contract municipality, we apply 62% of the costs are covered by the state and federal subsidies. Then we would apply the fares charged to the service, and if there are any remaining costs that are not covered, the municipality is responsible for those. So we are having conversations with the 3 contract municipalities now regarding how they want to move forward. You can go to the next slide. Spring Township for some time has been unhappy with the contract they had with CATA Service, and they notified us in the spring of last year that they intended to leave the system as of June 30th and 24. And we've been talking with them to see if we could figure out a way to keep them in the system, but as far as we know, they still intend to leave. Obviously, this is going to impact services in Benner and Bellefonte, and we're talking with those municipalities as well about how willing they are to continue to fund these services. We're going to have to conclude these negotiations with these municipalities by the end of January or early February and decide how to move forward with these services. So I can't tell you as at this point whether they'll remain in the service area or whether they will not. Next slide. A few other things to update you related to the conversation we had earlier about development. One of the things that CATA relies on fairly significantly is a pass program that we have with apartment complexes where primarily students traveling to the university or people traveling into town living in apartment complexes, they get a pass with that apartment complex and they can use our services for free. That is an incredibly important revenue source for CATA, and we also feel and hope you will agree that it's a benefit for the community, not just because it funds public transit, but also because literally thousands of people who would otherwise be driving are not driving and they're riding transit instead. So it enables our road system to be much less congested. For this program, we've informed the apartments that we're going to do a 10% increase in the costs for that this year, which is going to enhance our operating revenue. And we are doing a pilot with our apartment passes with an apartment, the Bryn on Viro Boulevard. Currently, these passes are only good for the specific services that we've set up to get people from their apartment to the university. We're doing an experiment to see if we broaden the usability of that pass, if it would be perceived as a higher value to residents, and if it is, then we may consider expanding that in the future and also possibly using that as another source of revenue if we can charge more because it's a full system pass. And we would certainly ask, and I believe it's been done in this township before, what's increasingly happening in townships is as these new developments come in for approval, one of the questions that's often asked is, are people going to be using public transit? And I believe the yards, part of their approval process required that they had to provide passes. No? Aspen. Thank you. There have been a couple, and that, I think, makes sense both for supportive transit and, again, traffic management throughout the region. Next. Our other big contracted services with the university. We negotiate our contract with Penn State once every 3 years and revisit the funding for or the funding amount annually. Over the years, we used to recover about 70% of the costs of providing university service, and that has dropped into the 60% range, 50% range, so we're working on getting that back up, trying to be sure that the costs for that service are being recovered to the extent possible. Next. And just a few other priorities for the coming year. We're trying to do a lot more of this, coming to talk with you and get your input other than just whenever we'd like you to give us match in the spring. So we're very interested in hearing your thoughts and suggestions about service improvements you'd like to see within the township. We are continually looking at our network of services and optimizing that. As we're able to bring drivers back in and improve our driver numbers, some of the changes that we've just recently made, we'll be revisiting to see if we need to sustain them or if we can continue to make changes, as our driving force hopefully increases. We're also going to be replacing our system-wide fare collection. We'd like to move to a system where people can use credit cards or any other fare media, smartphones, make that fully compatible with the university systems so that we can have one fare system that people can use. They don't have to buy tokens. They don't have to buy any kind of special fare media. And mobility as a service is a concept where we have one app that tells you where everything in the region is and how to connect to everything in the region, both the services we provide, services Penn State provides that the public can use, so members of the public can look at one place for all their mobility needs. And we're also looking at some long-term issues such as exploring where we might have transit hubs in the future as the system grows, and dovetailing that with development plans within the municipalities. And that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. And we'll start over here this time. Matt, questions, comments?
No, I think, that was very informative, and I appreciate that. When I hear, though, that 140 daily riders are now not in the system or able to use a standard route, I do get concerned, knowing the size of the buses. I'm just curious, what does an average bus, not a stretched, we'll say, whatever they're called, what does an average bus hold?
It depends on how it's configured. Some of them we have configured for more standees. But it's around 40 to 60 people, depending on how it's configured and depending on whether there are standees in addition to seated passengers.
Okay. So we're talking essentially just over 2 buses a day of people that can't get around or use the system as it was.
Honestly, I'm not sure I'd characterize it that way, but I suppose you could use that as a way of illustrating it. But we do know already that many of those passengers have shifted over and are using CATA Go.
But generally speaking, the 140, how many is that compared to the ridership that is not Penn State related? In other words, on campus, using the Blue Loop, White Loop, et cetera. That 140, how does it fit into the grand scheme of the percentage of the total of users that are not Penn State or on Penn State's campus? Do we have an idea of that?
I would have to get that for you, but it's a very low percentage. I mean, we have thousands of daily riders. Yeah, so it's a very small percentage.
All right. I think I'll reserve some of my comments until others have voiced theirs related to some of the public input that I've had already.
Thank you. Okay, Omari, questions?
Hello,
Hey,
Marty.
how's it going? As we begin to close the gap, increasing the number of riders, will the service come back to some of those areas where, as riders decrease, service went away, and so as we get more riders, will it come back? Is that kind of in the plans?
If we see the demonstrated demand and we have the resource to do that, then yes.
Okay. Leading question here. So so for instance, CATA Go, that's been a kind of Bellefonte, west into Ferguson, a couple of areas where we've been using that more. You mentioned demonstrated demand. So if CATA Go is starting to see that there's tens, hundreds, thousands of those trips, does it then make sense to kind of go back to fixed route?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. What we strive for is the most cost-effective way of providing public transportation. And to your point, I was going to ask that you put the PowerPoint back up, but to talk in round numbers about costs, when we run a fixed route bus, it costs us about $130, $140 an hour. That's no matter whether anybody rides it or not. When we operate a CATA Go vehicle, it costs us $60 and change an hour. So an example of kind of where we're watching this carefully is in Ferguson Township, where we used to operate a couple of fixed routes that very few people rode. So we spent a great deal of money providing bus service out there that nobody rode. We've transitioned that to CATA Go service, and as long as we're able to operate 2 CATA Go vehicles, that's still cheaper than what it would have cost to operate fixed route in the area. And we're providing substantially more service in that area now than we ever did on fixed route at a lower cost. And the CATA Go service provides both services within the area, and it also links to the broader network depending on where people want to go. I think in Harris and in the Bellefonte area, because the model is the same over there, the Spring Benner Bellefonte area, it's service within the area and also service to the Nittany Mall where you can connect to the network. About 30% of passengers seem to connect to the network, and the rest just do transportation within that area. CATA or Center West is going to be different because I think a lot of people there have been using it to connect to the fixed route to come into downtown or to the university, so it depends on the service area. But the threshold is if we have a need for more than 2 vehicles, then we start to look at should we be doing fixed route here instead.
Okay.
But the people who become accustomed to CATA ride, that is another concern. It's really nice because it comes to your door or close to your door and drops you off close to your door. And once people learn how to use the system, they tend to like it far better than they do fixed route. So we have to be thoughtful of how we convince people to go back to the bus if they've become too used to CATA Go.
Okay. And then have you received kind of community feedback? I think you said largely people are happy with CATA Go, but those that are not happy with it, are there improvements that you guys are working on?
It's mainly related to the functionality of the new app. We've had some difficulty making the connections. There's a functionality we do not yet have that we will in the spring. Sorry to get technical, but there's this thing called GTFS, which is a new federal requirement. It is a continuous, publicly accessible data feed of what our buses are doing all the time. Federal government uses it to keep an eye on what we're doing and our efficiency and all that kind of stuff. The advantage of that is that that can be used by software providers. If you use Google to figure out where our CATA bus is, that's where that information is coming from. So we're constantly streaming that. Our new app for CATA Go will be able to tie into that. So if you say you want to go from Pine Grove Mills to Nittany Mall, and so you need to connect to the college connector, the software will help you figure out how to do that. It will do it for you, so you won't have to do that yourself. That's our goal, to make the connection between the 2 modes much more seamless. We could never have done it with our old app. It just didn't have that functionality.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thanks. And Patty, and we'll go ahead and conclude board comment and before we take any public comment. Patty?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I haven't had the opportunity yet to ride CATA Go. It's one of those things that I have to figure out. I should let you know that I am a public transit rider. I don't drive. And I confess to being disappointed that the service out this way was cut. I will offer one reason maybe why your ridership isn't back is since COVID, it seems that every semester, you know, whether it's the fall schedule or the winter schedule or et cetera, the service is changing and routes are cut. And I appreciate that you have driver shortages and funding issues and trying to do more with less. I completely understand that, and I always appreciate that. I just would like to advocate on behalf of people who are not students and not going anywhere to say a consistency for maybe even a year might get more people riding buses. It's really hard to do that when it changes every winter or fall break. My other comment is about the College Avenue connector. As you know, mostly public transit riders are pretty flexible about walking a few blocks to connect to a fixed route. So the fact that College Avenue connector now ends at Butts Street is sort of leaves me scratching my head as to why there, because the red link is really just a few blocks away on campus. And so the people who would be going to Butts Street to that apartment building there probably have more frequent service riding the red link over there and just cutting through to their apartment building. So I would offer this suggestion on the College Avenue connector that maybe bring it out to Bristol and then run it down Bristol, and you could then go to the yards and get more apartment buildings in there. Just my 2 cents, and it would work for me.
I appreciate the feedback.
Because you're kind of go at night, like for instance, if I was coming to this meeting, I'd be forced to go to Uber anyway because it would stop at 8 o'clock. So that's just my suggestion.
Okay, I appreciate it.
That way I could walk a couple blocks up to the township building. That's not unreasonable. And my other question is question slash comment is that over in the yards, actually, we have a problem with trash. And the last time I was through on the bus, going through the yards, the trash cans at your bus shelters were overflowing. I want to say there were 3 of them, and each and every one of them was overflowing with trash. So who collects the trash at your CATA shelters? Is that you?
No, we're actually furious about that as well. That's the responsibility of the yards. And we've been trying to talk with management there about emptying the trash. So that is, we are as unhappy as you are about that situation.
Okay. So, so anyway, that's my comment. I would love for, I do have to learn how to use CATA Go. That is on my list of things to do. And my other comment is I would love to see the College Avenue connector extended out to Bristol at least.
And to that point, we are constantly looking, we have a service planning team, and we're constantly looking at ways to see if we can restore some fixed route service to this area whenever we have the resources to do so.
And one more comment too, I would be remiss if I didn't tell, I'm not sure, I haven't been on the College Avenue connector in a while. Where is the bus stop there for the new apartment building near Buckout? Is it, where, the outbound bus stop from campus out?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where that is. It's a block before Buckout, I believe.
Okay, so there's not one across from the new apartment building? Because I think that there was some concern from residents in that area that there was a CATA stop, like where the old house property was, and then that the students might just dash across College Avenue there.
What's that? Yeah, that stop is closed, but let me get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm going to allow public comment now, so you could stay at the podium, or I'd invite you to be seated if you wish. It's completely up to you. I know you may not be prepared for answering questions that come up, so feel free to either respond or, you can get back to us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I have with me Lori Miller. She's our Director of Planning and Community Outreach. We're going to capture all the questions here today, partly because we want to make sure that they are into our customer feedback system, because we track that. And then we'll be able to get back in touch with people at a later date when we can look into these things. So, thank you.
Thanks. And I was remiss. Jeremy does have a couple of questions, I think.
Yes. So to tie into what Mr. Heller and Ms. Stevens had pointed out, I was actually talking to somebody that works in Ferguson Township that said one of their coworkers who lives outside the region, they used to use CATA Go, which would connect them to a fixed route that took them remotely close to their employer, but with the recent changes, they now have to take CATA Go, get on a fixed route, and then transfer to another route to get to their employer, but they're only allowed one transfer, so now they have to pay twice the fare to get to work.
That shouldn't be. If you want to talk to me after the meeting, we'll find out who that is. Yeah.
And I had told that person, probably have that coworker call into CATA to at least voice their concern. And I do like the idea of the pilot program of the fixed of the bus pass going to the whole route. I know a lot of those passes are in student housing. I actually lived in student housing for a good long time, even after college. And I at one time had an employer in Patton Township, but my pass was only good to campus where I graduated. So nice to see that. And as you talk about new technology, I will point out, as Patty said, she's the public transit rider. I'm the person that takes trains. And from one thing that I have learned when I was over in the Bethlehem, Allentown area, I really liked the setup that Atlanta had with a mobile app where I was able to actually buy just a one-way pass for one trip. That made it very easy. Unlike when I was in King County that serves the Seattle area where you had to find change, and I didn't quite plan that when I made that big of a trip to carry change with me to make the bus routes.
Well, actually, you can do that now with, we have a system called Token Transit, which allows people to do virtual purchases. It's an add-on, and it can be cumbersome, so we want to replace our 20, 30-year-old fare boxes with a new system where we don't have to add things on. It's a system that you'll be able to use any kind of fare media for.
And that's good to know, because at one time I thought Token Transit was only like $6 for a whole pass the whole day, and it's like, I don't necessarily want to spend $6 if I just need to go one place and be done for the day. So nice to know.
Okay, I'll sit down.
Excuse me, could I add some comment to the earlier speaker, Patricia had for the CATA bus?
Yeah, we have a kind of a virtual line here of folks who've had their hand up. So go ahead and raise your digital hand, and we will get to you for your comments in order here.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think up first, I'm looking, Roseanne, if you would like to give your name and township of residence.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. Yes, I'm Roseanne McManus, and I live in Ferguson Township. Specifically, I live in the Fox Point neighborhood, so right around the intersection of College Avenue and Bristol. And I've been taking the CATA bus usually 5 days a week to work since I moved here in 2019. And as other people have already done, I wanted to express my disappointment at the elimination of the College Avenue connector service. I have been using the CATA Go, but it's really not a good replacement for commuters, and no one that I've talked to thinks that it is. In fact, a lot of people haven't even been willing to try it and have started driving. So, I mean, as was already explained, it does not go to campus, so you can't use it to get directly to campus. What CATA recommends is connecting to the College Avenue connector at Butt Street. But, you know, everyone who's traveled by air knows that connections make things a lot more difficult. And of course, this is connecting from a service that runs on a fixed timetable, the bus, to CATA Go, which does not. As I said, I've experimented with CATA Go. One time I used the arrive by option to try to match up with the bus. It got me there 15 minutes early, which is pretty early on a cold day. Also, I waited for the CATA Go van for 15 minutes on that day. So that made my total commute about 40 minutes, and that's for about 3.5 miles. It used to be 10 minutes. Other cases, I've used the option of requesting a pickup time with the idea of just walking the rest of the way to campus, which is about a mile, but rather than trying to connect to the bus. If you do the pickup request time, most of the time, like a slight majority, it comes at the requested time, but it can come 10, 20, even 30 minutes later as a 30-minute pickup window. Also, the duration of the ride can vary a lot depending on whether it picks up and drops off other people. So really, if I request, say, a 7 a.m. pickup time, I don't know if I'm going to get to my destination at 7:10, 7:20, 7:30, 7:40, even 7:50. That's just not reliable enough for commuters. Now, maybe better technology will improve this a little bit, but traffic is inherently unpredictable. Even Google's not very good at predicting exactly when you're going to arrive somewhere. I also feel, personally, it's worse for the environment. When I rode the bus, there were other people on there. Usually when I ride CATA Go, it's just me. About maybe half to 1/3 of the time, one other person. I mean, I feel like I'm creating extra pollution by specifically requesting this CATA Go ride, whereas the bus will be running anyway. Also, the transition hasn't been very well managed because it's actually not possible to select Butt Street yet as your stop in CATA Go, and so people have been selecting all other stops around there, and it's led to a lot of confusion with the drivers driving around looking, trying to find people. Now that part will probably get better eventually, but that's just an example of how this hasn't been planned very well. I'm sorry to complain so much, but I just feel CATA really hasn't acknowledged all the problems with CATA Go. They're promoting it as like a better alternative, but it's really not predictable enough for commuters, and that's why there's so many other people here with their hands up. And it's going to be hard for you to assess whether demand is coming back because so many people have just abandoned the bus to drive. So I think you're really kind of killing demand for public transportation. And I think there's a variety of possible solutions. Patty had a possible solution. You could run service less frequently. You could run service just during rush hour. You could even make the RC route come a little closer to your neighborhood. So thank you for listening, and I do appreciate, I do appreciate the difficulties that CATA is facing, and I've been a big fan of CATA for a long time. I've always been a big promoter of the bus. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. And next was Erin. If you would like to give your name and township of residence.
Yes, my name's Erin King. I am a resident of Ferguson Township. I live on Bristol Avenue, not far from Autumnwood Park. Roughly a quarter of a mile from where I used to catch the CC bus near the corner of Bristol and West College. That not being an option any longer has been difficult since January 8th, mainly because I'm pretty much in the same boat as Roseanne. And I really appreciate your comments, Roseanne, because a lot of us I think are in the same boat. Where the times that I've taken CATA Go, it's either been myself or one other person. One time there was a student who was on CATA Go who had to book the service an hour in advance just because he didn't know what time he would be able to get to the fixed bus he would have to transfer to get to campus. So it's not just faculty and staff, it's also some students that rode the CC buses when it came down West College who are no longer able to rely on the CC any longer and who also have to rely on CATA Go. I also am kind of puzzled with regard to the driver shortage because I have spoken with a number of drivers who have said that there are drivers that are not able to obtain 40 hours, that a lot of them are working below, well below 40 hours and are wanting to drive more, but unfortunately are not allowed to for whatever reason. So I'm really confused about the driver shortage when it seems to me that there are drivers that are willing to meet the demand, but are being denied the number of hours that they desire. I guess, let me see. I have a ride pass. I work on campus. I work at Penn State Libraries. The time that it would take me when the CC bus was still running, from the time I would leave my house and walk the quarter of a mile to the time I would get to the library, even though I would be dropped off at SCLO Library, it would take about a half an hour tops, about in total. And now it's a crapshoot. It can take twice that long just because scheduling the pickup, you don't know what time it's going to show up. This morning I scheduled the pickup and I think it was 18 minutes, but it kept getting pushed back. It went from 18 minutes to 20 minutes to 20 minutes. And it was like until it was finally getting to the point where I was not going to make the bus I needed to connect to, the RC bus outside of CATA, the RC shelter stop is where I would normally take CATA Go to pick up the shelter outside of the CATA garage on Research Drive that would take me to the Penn State Libraries. The RC bus would take me to the Penn State Libraries. I was going to miss that bus if I waited any longer, so I ended up having to call Uber. When I got home this evening on the RC, the quickest that the CATA Go was going to be able to come and get me was in 30 minutes, and it was freezing outside. And so I took an Uber from the bus stop. It was just a lot quicker and easier. I'm just kind of finding that I'm spending more and more money to travel barely 3.5 miles, and it seems to be the most inefficient way to get to work in the morning. So yeah, I think that definitely one of the solutions I would propose is to at least especially since the CC is, or either have the RC bus come into this area. And I understand that the RC doesn't even run during the summertime, so I'm not sure what bus I would connect to once the spring semester is over. But I would recommend that there be at least a few routes in the morning. The CC bus run from here to campus at least a few times in the morning, or to SCLO Library where it used to run, and a few times in the evening. And it takes me 3 times longer to get home in the evening than it did on the CC. So yeah, I'm in the same boat with Roseanne and probably a host of others, and I'm hoping for some type of compromise here that would help getting through this winter be a little easier. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to our next speaker. And I just want to ask everyone to keep their comments just a few minutes as we're really taking quite a bit of time on this item. And I want to hear everybody's public comments. I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak. So if you could take just a few minutes to share your thoughts. And I think up next was Yulen. And if you could please give us your name and your township of residence. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a Ferguson Township resident. I have a similar concern after they, exclude the college connected to the Bristol Avenue. I was thinking, for the now, there's RC loop, so I don't know why it will be difficult for RC loop to extend a little bit to the Bristol Avenue. You may even pass like Bristol Avenue, Stonebridge Apartments. That's actually probably more, people to ride bus there, then go back maybe to Blue Cross, back to the, probably original RC loop. I would think this is an easy, probably change or modification that may take more riders actually along the Bristol Road and the Blue Cross Avenue. So that's kind of a suggestion to maybe able to make change to accommodate, the riders at Bristol or areas that I think probably Stonebridge area. So that's what I think.
Thank you so much. And next, I believe, is Darlene. If you could give us your name and township of residence.
Hi, I'm Darlene Veshu, and I live out here in Ferguson. I've been a CATA writer since the 80s, and I lived out here before there was a waffle shop. So the fact that campus and light seems to moving west is why we need more service and not less service, frankly. I agree with everything that everybody has said so far. CATA Go just isn't going to work. If I wanted to use an app or a service like that, I'd just Uber every day, and I don't want to do that. We are talking about a 3 to 4 mile trip for most of us. And getting on a bus in town and riding less than a minute to Butt Street and then having to get that connector the rest of the way, I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. The whole precedent to me is ridiculous. Possible solutions would be if there was a bus stationed there every day that we could count on, okay. But I agree with maybe moving that connector a bit further west to make it easier. But I think what really needs to happen is to go back to using a smaller bus that we used to have when we had service all the way out to Pine Grove, and that would be 2 trips in town in the morning and 2 trips out at night. And that smaller bus was filled most days. It only went away because of COVID, and then after COVID, it never came back. Our township, I think, because I had somebody do a little research into this, funds CATA quite nicely as far as the municipalities are concerned. And yet we're the first people to get cut service. And I just think that needs to change. And I'm hoping that something changes way before fall, because waiting that long just seems unacceptable. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And next, I believe, is Karen. If you could give us your name and township of residence.
Hi, my name's Karen. I'm also a resident in Ferguson Township. I also take the bus along West College and Bristol stop, like Erin and Roseanne. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of data. I've also been trying out CATA Go. And one of the days I requested in the morning, and I had to wait 35 minutes for pickup. That's around or more than what one whole bus loop would have been when we used to have the bus. And so that is basically equivalent to like me getting to the bus stop and missing the bus, just missing the bus and having to wait for another one. Another thing that happened to me once when I booked at 8:30 in the morning was that the app actually dropped my request because it said that there was too much demand at 8:30 in the morning to use the CATA Go to get into campus. And so I think that sort of provides some maybe evidence that even a bus that comes a couple times in the morning and a couple times in the evening to our area would be useful, since it seems like a lot of us are commuting in and out. And I should mention that, like Patricia, I also live in the area, but I also don't own a car, and so CATA is my only means of transportation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Yes, and I'll invite you to come back up to the podium. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you all for your feedback. I actually have a specific question. If we were able to restore like a couple runs in the morning and a couple runs in the afternoon, what are the time periods that would work for you folks? Anybody?
And I'm sorry. I'm hearing something over here. I'll look online here if maybe Patty or we can go back in order here of the folks who had commented. if anyone just wants to say
Sure.
something.
I would say that probably commuter hours, if you maybe started at 7:30 and maybe ran for an hour and a half. I have meetings over that way sometimes at the COG building at 8:15. So, but I would defer to the people who are actually commuting into campus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, oh, I'm sorry, probably someone raised their hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree also. I mean, yeah, standard commuter hours like 7 to 9. I think the highest peak is right around 8 or so, like between 7:30 and 8:30 is like the very most popular time.
Okay, thank you. And
The
is it
best
possible
time
to
would
get?
be between 7 and 7:30.
Thank you. Is it possible to get contact information for these folks so we can follow up with them and have further conversation? You don't? Okay.
Perhaps you can give them contact information to directly contact you.
Sure.
That would probably be easiest, and that's
Yeah.
something we could, I'm sure we can have something
We
easily
can post
available.
something too on our webpage. We'll provide information about this presentation, and we certainly can provide information that you would like folks to reach out to you by email or by phone number.
That would be fine. My email address is drishel@catabus.com. So feel free to reach out to me directly.
I can add that into
Yeah, thank
to
you.
the webpage posting.
Because we appreciate your feedback, especially, and I heard a few things about the CATA Go app that should not be the case. So that concerns me. We'll look into those.
Thank you. Could you repeat your email address really
Sure.
quickly in case they're writing it down? now?
Drishel, drishel @catabus.com.
Thank you. It's fantastic. Thank you
Thanks
so
again.
much. Anything else from the board? And we very much appreciate you coming back up to the podium, so I just want to make sure we've covered all of our bases. I'll go to Jeremy first, since you were last in the first round.
Yeah, thank you so much for your feedback, and I thank our residents as well. Here, and a lot of them do reside in the area that I represent within the township. I just want you to know I've heard your feedback, and I appreciate your feedback, and would encourage you to contact David moving forward, and to encourage anyone else that might have feedback to reach out to CATA and speak. Yeah.
Yeah, Patty, anything else? No, okay.
Yeah, I just want to echo Mr. Thompson's sentiments as well, and thank the residents for going ahead and contributing to a conductive and, effective conversation this evening, with coming to the table with some options, right? Things that we might be able to do. And Mr. Rischel, thank you for listening and taking into account that, hey, there's a place for feedback, and maybe we can make some changes to accommodate the folks that are having the concerns. I will say this is great for me on a personal level too. I did attempt to use the CATA Go app back on October 5th. I had to look the date up. I did not find it to be usable, unfortunately, but I'm glad to hear also that there are videos and other training aids that might be out there right now to aid there. So thank you for that. And again, I just want to thank everybody for the conversation tonight.
Sure. And to clarify, the CATA app we're using now was just implemented on the 18th of December. So it's completely different service, completely different app. We're still working a few bugs out, but perfect. Much more functional.
Thanks for noting that. Omari, anything else?
Just echo everyone, thank you for solving the problem.
That's why we're here.
Thanks so much for coming. Thanks for the presentation and being so open to the feedback and working to resolve some things that were presented tonight. Very much appreciated. And thanks to the residents. These are exactly the kinds of issues that I'd been receiving some communications about, and you all just stated so clearly what the issues were that you were having. And like others have said, the suggestions on how to solve some of these immediate issues. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the manager, did you need a motion from us to receive this presentation, or?
It's up to the board. It's not necessary.
Okay, I think we'll move forward.